I only placed an order for family. My mother-in-law gave a sweet smile when my aunt questioned why I hadn't ordered steak or dessert for myself. Am I not considered family? Asked my husband. Not here, Hannah. Please, don't do this, he muttered, chewing as if that would make the tension vanish. But the entire table went silent when I said what none of them expected. My name is Hannah, and I've been married to Ryan for 7 years. We first crossed paths at a Saturday book club through a mutual friend. Back then, I was already working full-time as an accountant for a local supermarket chain. Ryan, meanwhile, was finishing graduate school in public administration. He used to gaze at me with this quiet admiration and say things like, "You're amazing. You work so hard while I'm just scribbling policy memos, it makes me feel like I'm slacking." I thought that meant something. When Ryan landed his first job as a budget analyst at the city clerk's office, we moved into a modest rental on the outskirts of the city. That's when I met his parents for the first time, Vivian and Tom. Vivian carried the scent of Chanel and judgment like royal regalia. Tom shook my hand as though he expected me to leave a tip in his palm. His sister, Lindsay, 2 years older than Ryan, had never held a job in her life, and she flaunted that fact shamelessly. Vivian's very first words to me, after silently scanning me from head to toe, were, "Oh, I imagined you'd be taller." Tom quickly added, "So, Hannah, you didn't go to college." That didn't carry enough pity to fill a bucket. I didn't flinch. I had bills to pay at 18 and made my choices. I'd never regretted them, until his family made me feel like I had to justify my very existence. At first, Ryan defended me. "She's the hardest worker I know. My parents can be a lot. Don't take it personally." So I didn't. I smiled when Vivian brought overpriced pastries only for Ryan. I said nothing when she sniffed in disdain at the store-brand coffee I served. But over time, the digs kept piling up. The compliments stopped, and Ryan's defense of me weakened. "She doesn't even handle investments," I once overheard Tom whisper after flipping through my pay stub, a pay stub Vivian somehow managed to get her hands on. "I honestly don't know how you cope," Lindsay said with fake sympathy. "I could never do all that grunt work." Sometimes I'd catch Vivian rummaging through my drawers under the pretense of looking for a napkin. One time she pulled out my bank ledger and shook her head, muttering about my pitiful savings and lack of a portfolio. Then she turned to Ryan and said, "You really should have married someone with a financial plan." Still, I kept trying. Every holiday, every birthday, every unbearably awkward dinner, I showed up. I cooked, cleaned, smiled, poured the drinks. One Christmas, everyone else unwrapped personalized gifts with thoughtful cards. I got a re-gifted candle. No one even blinked. Not even Ryan. By our 6th year of marriage, I began to see it all clearly. I wasn't a partner, I was the unpaid help with a marriage license. Yet, I clung to the hope that maybe, with enough time, we could find our way back. We didn't have children, but we had years together. I thought that mattered. That naive hope is what kept me walking into their house with my chin up, even when my heart sank a little lower each time. Then last summer came the lakeside cabin trip. Vivian told me to pack. "Family getaway," she said. Ryan and I drove to his parents' house. I went to use the restroom before we left. By the time I came out, they were gone. They left without me. Ryan later shrugged it off. "Mom said it should just be family." He said it like it was a neutral fact, not an insult. "But I'm your wife," I said. "Yeah," he replied casually, "but you're not blood." Those words sliced deeper than he could ever know. Or maybe he knew and just didn't care. And now, it was time for the annual August family lunch, when all the extended relatives flew in. By some miracle, my store gave the entire staff 3 days off as part of a wellness initiative. I should have taken a trip to the beach. Instead, I got conscripted into service. Vivian called me the night before. "You'll help with prep. Guests expect a certain standard." That standard meant I was up at 6 in the morning, chopping vegetables, dusting every corner, vacuuming floors, polishing smudges off wine glasses. While Ryan and his parents sipped espresso on the patio, I was ironing linen napkins. Lindsay floated in around noon and chirped, "Don't forget the vegan dish for Aunt Caroline." Then she disappeared again. By lunchtime, I was already exhausted. My arms ached, my back throbbed, and I hadn't even had a sip of coffee. Guests started arriving, loud, cheerful, full of energy. I plastered on a polite smile as the relatives poured in, guiding them to their seats, refilling glasses, and reheating sauces like some invisible hostess. Ryan didn't lift a finger. When I whispered and asked if he could carry the roast out, he muttered without looking at me, "You're handling it fine." It wasn't until every dish was on the table and the chatter settled into the rhythm of passing platters that I finally slipped into a chair. That's when Vivian rose with that syrupy grin of hers. "I've got a little surprise," she announced sweetly. "Just for the family." She swept into the kitchen and returned holding a silver tray. On it lay 7 perfectly seared filet mignons, pink and gleaming. She handed them out ceremoniously. Tom, Lindsay, Ryan, and 3 other relatives, each plate received with appreciative murmurs. "And for dessert," she said, holding up a pristine white box. "Imported French tarts. For family only, of course." The table erupted in delighted gasps and applause. Everyone but me. There had only been 6 plates, not 7. No dessert had been set aside for me either. My half-eaten roast chicken from earlier remained my only meal. The silence that followed felt sharp enough to draw blood. Aunt Sharon, sitting beside me, finally broke it. "Vivian, wasn't there one for Hannah?" Vivian glanced my way as if I was something she'd stepped on. "I only ordered for family," she replied lightly, with a shrug. The ringing in my ears drowned out the room. Heat clawed up my chest. I turned to Ryan, my last hope for acknowledgement. He didn't even glance at me, too busy cutting into his steak. Aunt Sharon shifted uncomfortably. "Ryan," she prompted. But I spoke before he could. My voice trembled, but it carried. "Tell me, Ryan, am I family or not?" He kept his eyes on his plate, chewing slowly, deliberately, as if my question were rhetorical, as if I hadn't just shattered the fragile quiet. Aunt Sharon's brows drew together. "Ryan, your wife just asked you something." Finally, he set his fork down, not startled, just irritated. "Don't do this, Hannah. Not here. Not in front of everyone." "Oh, I think right here is exactly the place," I said, my tone calm even as my hands trembled under the table. Vivian gave a cold laugh. "Honestly, this is so petty, Hannah. Throwing a tantrum over food." "Food?" I echoed. "No. This isn't about steak or dessert. This is about the way you've treated me for 7 years. Like I'm just renting space in your son's life. Like an outsider you never wanted." Tom scoffed. "No one ever said you weren't welcome." "No," I said evenly. "You never said it out loud. Instead, you implied it. With every condescending comment. Every time you pointed out I wasn't educated or refined enough. Every side eye, every backhanded compliment. Every time you rifled through my private things just to find something to hold against me." Lindsay snickered. "You're being dramatic." I turned to her. "Dramatic? You've never worked a single day. Meanwhile, I've been carrying this marriage financially for nearly a year, while your brother pretends to go to work every morning. So yes, Lindsay, I think I've earned the right to be dramatic." That finally got Ryan's attention. His head jerked up. "Hannah, shut your mouth." "Or what?" I shot back. "You'll lose your perfect little image?" "Hate to break it to you, but everyone's about to learn you haven't had a job since last fall." All eyes swiveled to him. Vivian blinked. "What is she talking about, Ryan?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I leaned forward, my voice steady. He was fired from the city clerk's office for a massive mistake in the tax filings. Hundreds of residents got incorrect bills, some were undercharged by thousands. Ryan was supposed to review everything before submission. He didn't. And he never told you because you were too busy criticizing my brand of coffee. "That's a lie," Ryan blurted, but even he didn't sound convinced. I didn't stop. "Since then, I've paid every bill. Every grocery run. I've covered rent, utilities, car repairs," while he sat at home pretending to job hunt, applying for positions he wasn't even qualified for. A thick silence spread over the table like oil. Aunt Sharon stared at Ryan. "Is this true?" she asked quietly. Ryan shot to his feet. "This is insane. You're trying to humiliate me." "No, Ryan," I replied. "You humiliated yourself the moment you sat there and let your mother deny me a plate like I'm the hired help." Vivian slammed her glass down. "You don't talk to my son like that. And you don't get to treat me like I'm disposable," I snapped back. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin manila folder, placing it in front of Ryan with a quiet thud. His brows knit. "What's this?" "Draft separation papers," I said calmly. "I've already spoken to an attorney. I'm not waiting for your approval.
The room froze. Even Lindsay stopped mid-bite. You're being ridiculous, Tom said finally. Am I? I turned my gaze on him.
You think I didn't notice the way you sighed whenever I entered the room? The way your eyes flicked to my hands like you were checking for grime. Lindsay's voice cut through, sharp and bitter. You're just bitter because you'll never belong with us. You've never had class, Hannah.
A faint smile curved my lips.
And yet I'm the only one at this table who knows how to pay a mortgage. Vivian shot up, face flushed. You think this makes you better? You're a cashier, Hannah. Accounting officer, I corrected evenly. At a chain that just promoted me to regional finance coordinator. And unlike your son, I actually read documents before I signed them.
Ryan shoved the folder back toward me. You're not doing this.
Oh, I absolutely am.
His voice cracked.
You're really going to throw away our marriage over one lunch?
I shook my head. No. I'm walking away because you've all treated me like a stranger in my own life. Because you let them grind me down until I forgot I had choices. But I do. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before.
Maybe he hadn't.
Maybe I'd never let him. I turned to Aunt Sharon. I'm sorry you had to witness this. She set her napkin down gently. Don't apologize, dear.
You've shown more grace than most would in your shoes. Then she looked directly at Vivian.
And you? You should be ashamed.
You humiliated your daughter-in-law in front of your entire family.
She's not my daughter-in-law anymore, Vivian spat. I gave a small nod.
And you'll never get another chance to treat me that way again.
Ryan's voice was barely audible. You really mean it?
You're actually leaving.
I didn't reply.
Instead, I stood, walked into the kitchen, took my purse from its hook by the door, and returned to the dining room. You'll receive the official paperwork this week, I said evenly.
Vivian crossed her arms with a smirk.
Don't expect any sympathy.
Aunt Sharon rose from her seat.
On the contrary, Vivian. I think you'll find the rest of the family feels very differently.
Vivian blinked.
What's that supposed to mean? It means we're all tired of the constant drama, the insults you disguise as tradition. I won't be attending your Christmas brunch this year.
You can't be serious, Vivian scoffed. Sharon glanced around the table. Several cousins nodded in agreement.
I'm completely serious.
I turned toward the door. Ryan made one last attempt. Hannah, don't go. Please. I paused in the doorway but didn't look back. You had 7 years to treat me like family.
You chose silence.
Then I stepped outside.
The 10 seconds it took to walk to my car felt like an eternity of quiet. No yelling, no rushing footsteps, no last-minute apologies, just the sound of my heels against the pavement and the heavy August heat radiating off the driveway.
I didn't cry. I didn't glance over my shoulder.
By the time I pulled into what I now considered my driveway, I'd already texted my lawyer to proceed.
The folder was real.
The conversations with my attorney were real. I simply hadn't imagined I'd need to use them so soon.
But I no longer needed to wait. The breaking point hadn't been about steak.
It was the silence, Ryan's silence. That week blurred into a haze of paperwork and iced coffee.
I moved into the guest room and kept my distance.
Ryan tried to convince himself it was just a marital spat. People divorce over affairs, not over lunch. You're being dramatic, he said. But deep down, he knew. He stopped leaving the house, stopped pretending to apply for jobs. He just sat there, drifting. Meanwhile, I threw myself into the future. I officially accepted the promotion with my company, Regional Finance Coordinator, with a generous pay raise and remote work flexibility. The role required a relocation in 3 months. I didn't tell Ryan. Why would I? The only thing I did tell him was our mediation date, September 9th. I filed for no-fault divorce, but beneath that legal label sat years of very real fault. 3 days before mediation, Aunt Sharon called me. I just wanted you to know, she said gently, you weren't the only one who saw it. What happened at that lunch, that was a reckoning. Word, it seemed, had traveled fast. The cousins and in-laws who had sat in awkward silence that day were furious after I left. Some confronted Vivian directly. Others walked out early. Sharon shared everything with the extended family. Her words to them were simple. You don't starve someone and call it hospitality. The fallout was swift. Vivian and Tom were politely uninvited from 2 upcoming weddings. Lindsay, who always bragged about being the life of every party, hadn't received an RSVP in weeks.
Turns out, reputation doesn't guarantee immunity. And Ryan? He was unraveling.
One evening, I came home to find him slouched on the couch with a half-empty bottle, his eyes glassy. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" he slurred.
"Burn it all down." "No," I replied softly.
I just stopped pretending the ashes were flowers. The day of mediation arrived.
Ryan wore a suit that was too tight and couldn't meet my eyes.
I wore a navy dress, hair neatly pinned up, and brought every financial record, every receipt, transfer, and bill I'd paid during his unemployment. My lawyer hardly needed to speak. The documents told the story. At the end of the session, Ryan looked at me like he wanted to say something meaningful. Instead, he whispered, "I can't believe you're doing this to me." I stood.
"No, Ryan. I can't believe you did this to me."
When the divorce was finalized, there was no celebration. I went home, ordered Indian takeout, and slept for 12 hours straight. The silence that night felt different.
It felt earned. Weeks rolled by.
Vivian attempted damage control. She sent a half-hearted email full of empty phrases like, "I'm sorry if you were hurt," and "We've all said things we didn't mean."
I didn't respond.
I archived it and moved on. The promotion brought me to a new city 2 states away, into a sunny apartment with a south-facing balcony and a dishwasher that didn't rattle. My new co-workers sent welcome plants and baskets. My manager smiled and said, "We've heard nothing but wonderful things about you." For the first time in years, I felt recognized for who I was, not for what I lacked. One evening in late October, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number.
It was Ryan. His voice was soft.
"I just wanted to say I miss you."
I didn't answer right away. "I think we got lost. I should have spoken up. Should have stood by you."
"Ryan," I said quietly. "You had 7 years."
"I know. I was scared."
"Scared of what?"
"Your mother?"
"Oh, everything."
There was a long pause. "I've been thinking of visiting."
"Maybe talk in person," he said finally.
I stared out at the skyline beyond my balcony. "No need."
Everything I needed to hear, I already heard in that dining room.
He didn't argue. Just let the silence settle. Before he could say more, I added, "I'm not angry anymore, Ryan.
I just don't belong in that life, and it doesn't belong to me."
He exhaled heavily.
"So that's it. That's it." I hung up. For a moment, I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the soft hum of my new life. No sharp words, no footsteps, no tapping nails on a wine glass. Just me, my apartment, and a basil plant that needed watering.
Some wounds don't need words to cut deep.
And some silences don't hurt, they heal.